Any gunslinger worth their salt is going to become known for their legendary deeds and exploits. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, here to go over the first edition Pathfinder Gunslinger's deeds and skills. Now, deeds are essentially a class ability for you, but you gain access to more deeds or abilities as you advance in level. And then your skills are of course your class skills, and we're going to cover the ones that are most useful to you, but still go over ones that may be incidentally useful depending on your build or your race picks and which features you swapped around. But before we get into those details, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there to hit the subscribe button and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already listed yourself on such a legendary roster of incredible adventurers, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. But now, let's go ahead and start covering your deeds. So then, at first level, you will unlock Deadeye. It will cost you 1 grit per range increment after first, and all of your ranged attacks will target your opponent's touch AC. So if you're within that first range increment, this costs you nothing so long as you have grit available. So it will behoove you to find ways to increase your range, whether that's getting your DM to allow you to customize your firearm, getting the far shot feat, or having enchantments that increase your range. All of that will help to reduce how much grit you're spending, but even then, at 1 grit, you're effectively doubling the range at which this deed will take effect. Also at first level, you get Gunslinger's Dodge. You spend 1 grit to move 5 feet and get a +2 armor class bonus when a ranged attack targets you, or you can drop prone to get a +4 armor class bonus. Be aware that the 5-foot movement does trigger attacks of opportunity if you're in melee range, and dropping prone will leave you incredibly vulnerable to melee opponents, and as well as getting up will provoke attacks of opportunity. The only time you'd really worry about dropping low is if you're far away, have a height advantage, and a ranged attack is coming at you. If you drop low, you'll probably be dropping behind some kind of cover on top of getting this +4 armor class bonus, so then it might be useful, but otherwise, just use the 5-foot movement and ideally make sure you're clear of your opponents up close and wanting to fight you in person. Also, at first level, you get Quick Clear. This one won't come up super often, hopefully, but you remove the broken condition from your firearm if the condition was gained from a misfire. You have to have 1 grit point to use this, or you can spend 1 grit to make it a move action instead of using a standard action. So definitely a great one to have. It's not going to come up all the time, but when it does, you'll be thankful you have it. Then at 3rd level, you get Gunslinger Initiative, and this is a great one. You only have to have 1 grit point in your pool to gain a +2 initiative bonus and draw an unhidden firearm as part of your initiative if you have the quick draw feat. We will probably have the quick draw feat in all likelihood. You're a gunslinger. What kind of gunslinger doesn't have quick draw? Then also at 3rd level, you get Utility Shot. You have to have 1 grit point in your pool to use the following abilities. Blast Lock, which allows you to shoot a lock to break it. The starting AC is 7, but it goes up depending on the quality of the lock. +10 for a simple lock, or +30 for a superior lock. So you may not be using that all the time, but again, it's appropriate. It's definitely fitting for a gunslinger. As is Scoot Unattended Object. You shoot at an object to move it 15 feet away. Depending on the size, that will dictate what armor class it has. And also Stop Bleeding. You fire a shot in the air or at the ground, wherever, and use the heated gun barrel to end a bleeding effect. Your own and allies and opponents, if you're concerned about your opponent bleeding out. But still, definitely a range of abilities that just give you a certain amount of utility outside of combat. Then at 7th level, we come to Startling Shot. You only have to have 1 grit point in your pool and use a standard action to make a missed attack, causing the target to be flat-footed until the start of their next turn. Now, the fact that this uses up a standard action does hinder you somewhat, but it doesn't allow a save, and making a target flat-footed opens up some really good combo effects, like say if you have a rogue friend that doesn't have flanking, they now get to hit a flat-footed target and get all of their sneak attack bonuses. Then for 11th level, we come to Bleeding Wound. You spend 1 grit as a free action to deal extra bleed damage equal to your dex modifier, which is going to be good. Or you can spend 2 grit to deal 1 strength, dex, or constitution bleed. Strength is probably not a bad pick. Dex is certainly a good one, given that dexterity is a prime stat affecting armor class, skills, reflex saves, initiatives, things like that. But constitution, you're going to do all kinds of hit point damage in that regard, so definitely that is the superior choice. So if you have the grit to use Bleeding Wound, use it. Just make sure it's on a target that's vulnerable to bleed effects. Then also at 11th level, you get Lightning Reload. You have to have 1 grit point in your pool, but then you get to reload 1 barrel of a firearm as a swift action. If your gunslinger also has the rapid reload feat or uses alchemical cartridges or both, then this becomes a free action. A free action of reloading, which doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity, which is great. By this point, depending on the builds, you're probably able to reload as a free action anyways, but this is great to have, and the fact that this prevents you from attracting attacks of opportunity is great. And then at 15th level, you get Evasive. It's another one where you only have to have 1 grit point in your pool to gain Evasion, Uncanny Dodge, and Improved Uncanny Dodge, using your Gunslinger as rogue levels. Evasion and Uncanny Dodge are great damage reducers, and the fact that you have a good dexterity score and great dex synergizes and syncs up really well with this particular deed. This will reduce damage from incoming reflex save based attacks like Fireball or Lightning Bolt, and help to negate damage even on failed saves or completely ignore it on successful ones. And then Improved Uncanny Dodge essentially makes it so that you cannot be flanked in melee unless you're being attacked by a rogue 4 levels higher than you. And 19th level rogues are not incredibly common for you to come across. Then we come to the pièce de résistance for deeds at level 19 with Cheat Death. When reduced to 0 or fewer hit points, spend all your remaining grit, minimum of 1, to instead be reduced to 1 hit point. So maybe it doesn't completely stave off the possibility of death for you, but for that moment it will, and given some of the gear choices or enchantment choices I'll be recommending later, this will mesh really nicely with that. And then that wraps up our deeds, so now we move on to your class skills, starting off with Acrobatics, which works off of your dexterity. This allows you to cross narrow, slippery areas, jump, flip, or pass through threatened squares. We're going to be chronically avoiding melee like the plague, so you may not need this incredibly much, but it can still be useful enough to make it worth at least throwing in 1 point. Your incredible dexterity score and the fact that we're going to be increasing it will probably be more than sufficient with at least 1 skill point thrown in. And then we have Bluff, which works off of your charisma, a potential dump stat. Depending on your build and feat selection, this could be handy. It certainly is thematic and appropriate in many respects. We also have Climb, which runs off of strength. Again, another potential dump stat. This will let you climb things. Regardless of your build, it's probably worth throwing in at least 1 point, because remember, you put 1 skill point into a class skill, you get that +3 miscellaneous modifier, so you're getting essentially a +4 bonus to it. And depending on what your stats are, that might work out alright for you. And then we come to the craft skill, which includes a fairly wide array of different skills, and it works off of intelligence, another potential dump stat. Hobgoblins, who are swapping out their stealthy racial feature for their bonuses to craft alchemy and knowledge engineering, could find some interesting uses for this, making your own ammunition, for example, or improving your ammunition if your DM will let you do that. Certainly, I would be open to that. And we also have Handle Animal, which goes off of your charisma. It's, again, thematic and useful for mounted combat style gunslingers. This is going to be used for teaching your mount tricks and the like, or helping them become better trained mounts. Then the next skill we have is Heal, which works off of your Wisdom, which is one of your good stats. And with this, you could actually make a good non-magic healer. But that's the thing, non-magic healer. You're probably going to have a caster in your game, or if not a caster, somebody who can make use of a Wand of Cure Light Wounds. But maybe, depending on the build and the party composition, might be worth the occasional point or two, just to help out. Then we have Intimidate. It runs off of your charisma, and again, it's another one that is appropriate for a gunslinger to have, that steely, hard-eyed stare that just unnerves their opponents around them. It's definitely great for that kind of unflappable gunslinger. And then we have Knowledge Engineering. Again, as I said earlier, for hobgoblins that are getting a bonus to this, this can be interesting if your DM allows you to apply it to firearms. It certainly is technologically oriented, or, you know, looking at like the engineering and construction of different buildings and fortifications, but the technological bent is what we're going for on this one in regards to firearms. So definitely see if you can sell your DM on this. If not, probably worth skipping. Then we have Knowledge Local, which again, another intelligence-based skill. This can be useful, but it kind of depends on the DM laying the groundwork for it to be useful. This helps to identify local legends, figures, leaders, and the like, and helps to dredge up information in that regard, which can be useful for a number of different quests or picking up leads on information for whatever missions you might be on. But, again, can depend a little bit, but probably worth it overall. And then we come to a skill that is absolutely worth it, and that's Perception, running off of your Wisdom. This is the most rolled skill in the game, and it works off of a great stat for you. It's appropriate for the gunslinger to be perceptive as well. And then we also have Profession, which again works off of Wisdom. This can be wildly useful or incredibly useless. This can be used to fill gaps between certain skills like Craft Alchemy and Knowledge Engineering. The Profession skill description says that this is used to fill in gaps that surround certain skills, things that are a bit more broadly defined rather than specified, like alchemy or knowledge engineering. So depending on what you can sell your DM on, this could be a great skill to have outside of combat when you're tinkering or engineering with your alchemical creations, engineering your own firearm, things like that. And then we have the Ride skill, which works off of your dexterity. This is only going to be really useful for mounted combat builds. If you're really feeling the need to, throw a single point into it and call it good. Between that, the miscellaneous bonus, and your dexterity score, that's probably going to be more than sufficient if you're not going to be focusing on mounted combat. And then next up we have Sleight of Hand, which works off of Dex and is actually a good skill. You can lift keys off of a target, subtly draw your gun, cheat at cards, any number of different things, or you can just go down to simple pickpocketing if you like. Then we come to Survival, which is another wisdom-based skill. This is maybe worth the occasional point depending on the campaign, but if there's a caster in the party or a ranger, then you're safe to skip this. The ranger skill and their class bonuses to survival are going to more than make up for this. And then lastly, we have the Swim skill, which works off of your strength. This will be important for aquatic campaigns, so there you'll want to put the rep points into it regularly. But you're probably going to be okay with just throwing 1 point into this, especially since we're only going to be wearing medium to light armor, probably light armor more often than not. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Certainly we did not cover every single last deed on the list. There are more useful deeds on there, but these are deeds that are going to be useful to any gunslinger build, not just the specific one we're looking at today. So definitely let me know your thoughts down below. Which deeds do you think stand out a little bit more? Certainly there's things like Gunslinger's Luck, I believe it is. It's a deed that lets you spend grit to re-roll failed saves. That one's definitely great. I mean, especially if you fail a will save. Definitely a great one to have on your list, but still, go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts and hit those like or dislike buttons. And remember, if you're new here to the Gamer's Den, then go on down there to hit the subscribe button and become a regular member. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.